Hello, my name is Ada. I'm from the United States.
I'm Nahian, I'm from Bangladesh.
Figured we'd make this video because a lot of people, including myself and Nahian, when we're applying, have questions about like what exactly is applying, what does that mean, and like what do you need to do in order to be prepared to apply. Both of us are what you call NC students, so we applied through our national committee, got in, and then got nominated to the campus. And we didn't even say what school we're going to. So we go to UWC Thailand.
Yeah. The UWC selection process is normally done through the national committees in different countries. So the national committees are basically an organization that selects students from all over that country and send them to different UWCs.
So throughout this, we'll talk about our own experiences with NC application. So it relates to my experience applying through the United States National Committee.
And for me, from Bangladesh National Committee.
Yeah.
So the first thing we're going to talk about that there is actually no right type of person that UWC is looking for. Everyone's different and everyone's application will be different according to that.
At least for me, when I was applying, the biggest concern was like, am I fitting the criteria for this school that I'm applying to for UWC? And something you come to learn in the application process, especially once you get to finalist weekend, if your national committee does that, is that there's really not a certain type of person for UWC. So first thing that you may be stressing about, you can relax because there's not a certain type of person that they're looking for. And if you're interested, you're already like one step ahead.
Yeah.
That you have to be yourself when you're applying. So if you're applying through your national committee and you feel like you have to fit a certain image or like a certain amount of requirements and you're not being honest about that in your application, I promise you the national committee will notice, because one thing they're really looking for is individuality and you just kind of showcasing who you are and what your actual interests are. So yeah, you must be yourself when you're applying all the time.
Yeah, and it's really important to know yourself better, because what happened to me is when I was applying that I had to think everything again because I felt like I don't really know myself that well. So just think about it, like what's your strengths, what's your weaknesses, where you can do better, and how you feel about certain things. So just think about it before you apply to UWC, and there's gonna be a lot of question about that in your application.
Points really quick, but it just felt like we should mention it.
Yeah, like there is no grade requirement for you to apply to UWC. Different school has different grading system like throughout the world, so they don't really look at what grades you are getting like throughout grade 9 or grade 10. So if you have lower grade or like mid or like higher grade, it's fine, you can just apply, because only the grades doesn't matter in the UWC application process. There's a way more, like there's a lot more thing than the grade.
Doesn't make or break your application how you've done in school, especially for our generation. A lot of us have been going to school throughout the pandemic that's happening, and they're pretty accommodating to understand that maybe like that's had a big effect on your learning. So don't stress too much about where you are academically. Again, if you're interested, that's already a big step forward.
Yeah.
And this is for all stages of the...
Yeah.
So one point that's really good is throughout the entire application process, I'll let Nahian explain it.
Yeah. So the thing is, they don't expect you to know everything, or they don't expect you to be like very high from your standard. Like you just need to act according to your age, because you're like, I don't know, 16, 15, 17 who are applying. So they don't expect you to know all the global issues in the world, what's happening. Like, it's good to have knowledge, but it's not like it's a requirement that you have to meet. It's just, you don't have to take any preparation for that. You don't have to stress about that. I got a lot of questions that how to prepare for my application, like the written application. It's very personal. It's just you talking about yourself. It's not anything academic. So they don't really expect you to know like all that 9th grade, 10th grade things, or like global issues happening, or like anything that's academic. It's mostly very personalized.
When you're writing your application, what you should be writing about is what comes to mind and what you know and what you're thinking about. It shouldn't be like researching to find stuff that you think they'd like you to write about. Because if you're writing, like you could write a really informative statement, you could answer the questions in a really like globally minded way by researching a bunch of stuff that's happening, researching a bunch of concepts and referencing them. But if it's not something that you genuinely already know and are interested in, then the people looking at your application will know that. So write about what you know already, and there's time for you to figure out that stuff and become more interested in more things once you get there. So don't stress too much about that.
So the next thing we're going to talk about is the scholarship. I know for a lot of people, scholarship is really important to have, like, to get the UWC education. It was for me, it was the same for me. So the scholarship is extremely need-based. It's not like if you do really good in the selection process, you're gonna get the scholarship, or if you don't do that great, you're not gonna get the scholarship. It's not like that. They're gonna give you a financial assessment form where you need to fill up some information, like financial information, your background, and like where you are right now, and your family, like how much your family can contribute, how much your family's incomes, and things like that. And based on that financial assessment form, your NC will provide you with a scholarship, probably from the school or maybe from the NC itself. So it was like that for me.
Yeah, so for me, the National Committee in the United States we're really lucky if you're applying as a U.S. student through the U.S. National Committee, because you're pretty much guaranteed to get money as a scholarship. And actually what our National Committee does, which I think is really cool, is that they do the same assessment financially. So they'll look at all of your family's income, your expenses, like if you have other siblings, and everyone will pay as much as they can afford to pay. So it's not that if you get in, you're guaranteed to have a scholarship, but if you need a scholarship, you'll have one. When I applied through my national committee in the United States, tends to be 3 stages of application. So you have a written application that you send, then you have an interview, which is always virtual, it's never in person, and then there's a finalist weekend. I don't know what it was like for you.
We had a group activity.
Okay. Yeah. Did you have a written application and then?
Yeah, first for Bangladesh National Committee, we had a written application, which is not academic at all, which is just bunch of questions and personal statement. And then we had group activities where everyone who are applying go to a certain place and they divide them into different groups and their discussion. There are some formal, informal, friendly debates about different issues. There's nothing to be stressed about that because it's very cooperative environment. They don't really look for someone who can dominate the discussion. They look for people who cooperate discussion, who starts a new discussion, and who can really think critically about that. And then we had the interview, which is really chill. It's just a friendly conversation between you and an alumni or someone from the NC.
Yeah, so that's the next point that we'll talk about is after you've done, usually for most national committees, you'll do some form of a written application. And if that's accepted, the next step is interview. So we'll talk about the interview a bit now. Like Nahian said, it usually happens with an alumni or someone who's affiliated with UWC. Also, for me, there's a lot of applicants in the United States, so they had a couple extra people hired to just help with the interviews who are not as affiliated with UWC, but they're just there because they're conducting interviews a lot. So the case will usually be, though, that somebody who's gone to UWC or who works at UWC will be conducting your interview. I think the first important thing to know is that it's really hard to prepare for these interviews, and that's not a bad thing. It's just that it's not like preparing for a job interview or an interview for a university, because they're not asking everybody the same questions, basically.
Yeah, and interview is, you just need to read through your application before you go through interview. It helps a lot because there are questions during the interview that's also in your application. I felt like my interview was an extended part of my application, what I was asked in the application. So they asked similar kind of question, but it was more extended and more personalized towards me. So yeah, just talk about that. There are simple questions like, what do you think your strengths are? And they can give you certain situation and ask how do you take,
what would you do in this situation?
In this situation.
Yeah.
And they also asked me the questions are pretty simple, how do you take your decisions when you're stressed or when you're in pressure? How do you manage your times and things like that?
And the questions for me were completely different from that, really. They pitched a scenario to me too, and they were like, what would you do in this situation? But it is very important to note that even within the same national committee, the questions that you are asked and the questions that your peers are going to be asked are completely different, because the interviewers are reading your application and they're having questions about what they're reading and they want to know more about you, so they will make these questions to you. So I tried to prepare for mine beforehand. Like, I did a practice interview with some of my teachers, and it was helpful in terms of nerves, because it was like, okay, like, this is somebody asking me questions and me answering, but the questions were so different. And so standard interview questions, like, you know, what do you look forward to at this school, or like what are you going to contribute, or what makes you a good candidate? Like, there's not as much the questions that they'll ask. So I think the best thing you can do to prepare is just to go and be as relaxed as possible, and also know that it will be more of a conversation than like a, you know, an interview where the person's like asking questions. So it feels, it's more chill than you probably expect it will be. And so just remember to be honest about who you are and what you're talking about, and just try and relax, because these people want to speak to you.
Yeah.
The last point is not to hold yourself to any expectation next to the people who you also know are applying. When I applied, I didn't know anyone else who was applying to UWC, but I know that for some people they're applying and their friends are applying, or their family members are also applying. And when you get to your group activity or your finalist weekend, you're often there with other people who are similar to your age. You're all there because you really want something, but ultimately not everyone is going to get accepted. So in these situations, it's really hard to not be comparing yourself to people. And I think it's super important, as much as you can, to make an effort not to do this, because it takes away from your focus on the actual material and the application and like the finalist weekend that you're at. Just know that, again, there's not a certain type of person that they're looking for. He said to me once, which I think is quite true, is if you're meant to go to UWC, if UWC is the right place for you, your national committee will see that and you will go. And if you aren't meant to be at UWC, or maybe it's just not right for you, things also will work out. Like, it's not a make or break situation whether you go or not. Of course, we're so excited to have you at our campus, but also if you applied to UWC, you showed that you have this interest in the world. You show you have interest in different things, and whether you go to United World Colleges or not doesn't change that. So just keep your passion throughout the selection process, no matter what happens, and we're really proud of you for putting in the work. Good job.
You're gonna do good.
You're gonna do so good. If you have any questions, you can comment, and you can also like message on social media if you are able to stalk us that well.
Yeah.
All right, good job. You're gonna do great. Bye. So there's my flag, and this actually isn't Nahian's flag.
Of course, I don't live in this room.
This is Nahian's co-year's flag, but it seemed appropriate. Shout out to Johanna.
Caring is loving and loving is caring.